Ondo Finance, Guggenheim, and OpenEden all moved hundreds of millions of dollars in tokenized real-world assets on to the XRP Ledger over the last few weeks. And most XRP holders are going to listen to this and they are going to go right back to checking that price chart. That is the wrong instinct. And I want to let you know, because what just happened on the XRP Ledger is the kind of move that does not show up on CoinMarketCap. On April 24th, in one single day, 900 million in tokenized assets were settled on the XRPL. The 30-day total is now sitting around 3.5 billion, and the institutions doing it are not making a press release to you. They are doing it very quietly, like they always do it. They're not announcing it. They are just quietly deploying their capital. So I want to walk you through what really happened and why the price is not showing up yet, and why most people are just going to miss this until it's already too late to be positioned around it. I'm Camila Stevenson, and around here we talk wealth. And listen, this is one of those moments where the on-chain data is telling a completely different story than the price chart, and you need to know how to read both. So go ahead and like the video, and also subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. And I do want to say, this is not financial advice. Everything I share is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research, and do not follow me to make your investments. That belongs to you and your choices only. All right, so let's get into this. Let me first lay out exactly what is happening, because I want to make sure that you are on the same page before we get into what it actually means. So in the last 30 days, the XRP Ledger has seen its tokenized real-world asset market grow by roughly 875%. We are talking about a move from a few $100 million in tokenized assets to roughly 3.5 billion in 30 days. On April 24th alone, again, 900 million in new real-world assets settled on the ledger in one single day. $900 million one day. And here is the part that should make you pay attention. The institutions doing this are not crypto native experiments. Ondo Finance is a regulated tokenized treasury issuer, and they've been moving hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tokenized US treasuries and money market products onto XRPL. Guggenheim, the asset manager that manages hundreds of billions of dollars of traditional capital, has placed institutional product onto XRPL. OpenEden, which serves regulated financial institutions, have done the same. Also, RWAs, which is a regulated digital asset exchange in the United Kingdom, has publicly committed to bringing an additional $1 billion in tokenized assets onto XRPL by the middle of 2026. Layered on top of that, Ripple's own institutional stablecoin RWAs just crossed $1 billion in market cap, and the daily payment volume on XRPL is now consistently north of $1.7 million in pure settlement flow, separate from the speculative trading you see on the exchanges. Now, just zoom out for a second. In the same window, XRPL is ranked second globally in 30-day RWA growth. Not Ethereum, not Solana, the XRP Ledger, on a metric that measures real institutional capital being placed onto a blockchain in the form of regulated tokenized assets. That is what is happening. Now, let me start with something that is overlooked when people hear tokenized real world assets. This is not a crypto buzzword. When you are talking about Ondo Finance and Guggenheim and RWAs, this is the process of taking a real regulated financial instrument like a U.S. Treasury, a money market fund, a corporate bond, a unit of real estate, a slice of private equity, taking that real legal asset and issuing a digital representation of it on a blockchain ledger that settles in seconds and not days. Now, think about what has to be true for an institution like Guggenheim or Ondo Finance to deploy hundreds of millions of dollars in regulated product onto a specific blockchain. They don't pick the blockchain because it is trendy. They pick it because the boxes have been checked. Of course, the regulatory clarity, the settlement reliability, the institutional grade custody, regulatory wrappers that do not break the underlying security or fund regulation, and scalable liquidity for issuance and redemption. Every one of those had to be checked for 900 million to land on XRPL in one single day. That does not happen by accident. That happens because the architecture has been designed for exactly this kind of flow for years. And the institutions making the choice, Guggenheim, Ondo, OpenEden, ArcSex, are not testing the water, they are deploying, and that is the receipt. Now, I want to give you a historical parallel because it fits into what I'm discussing right now. Back in 1996, the United States passed the Telecommunications Act. Most people read it as just another piece of regulation. The headlines talked about long distance phone bills and consumer choice. But what was actually happening underneath was the beginning of the modern internet. And I love to compare this because I really want people to understand what's really happening right now. Now, the act broke open the rights to lay fiber optic cable across the country, and a small number of companies and investors quietly bought up the right to build the infrastructure that everything we do online runs on. Most people missed it because the headlines weren't about phone bills. The signal was about infrastructure. Apply that frame to what is happening on the XRPL. The headlines are about XRP's price, but the actual signal is that hundreds of billions of dollars of regulated financial product is starting to migrate onto a new settlement layer. And the layer being chosen by the most credentialed institutions is XRPL. The price chart may not show the exact value of that for some time. And the infrastructure decisions are being made years ahead of the price discovery. We are in the infrastructure and capital phase right now on XRPL. The awareness has not arrived. The price discovery has not arrived, but the architecture is being built in real time. Let me also stack this on to how you see this fitting together, because the 900 million day on April the 24th is not happening in isolation. In the last 60 days alone, here's what has moved forward. Ondo Finance has expanded its tokenized US Treasury product on XRPL. Like I just said, Guggenheim has placed institutional product on XRPL. OpenEden has deployed regulated tokenized assets onto XRPL. RLUSD crossed $1 billion in market cap. ArcSex has publicly committed to $1 billion of additional RWA volume by mid-2026. Remember, Societe Generale issued a regulated euro stablecoin on the XRPL. 3 central banks ran proof of concept settlements using XRPL infrastructure. Japan's institutional study showed XRPL settlements saved roughly 60% on cross-border transaction costs compared to legacy SWIFT messaging, and Ripple itself acquired G Treasury, a corporate treasury platform that handles enterprise transactions for clients, including Subway, in a $1 billion deal that puts XRP and RLUSD directly into the cash management workflows of multinational companies. Every single one of those moves is an institutional checkpoint. That is not noise. And I'm combining them so you can really see what's going on all in a consolidated amount of time. That is a system being built, and the people building it are not making CNBC appearances. They are signing contracts. They are integrating APIs. They are drafting custodial agreements. The tape on the ticker is the last thing that will move. You are not early to a story when the news is finally covering it. You are early when institutions are deploying and the news is silent, right? So we are in that window right now. Now, I also want to address the part that you may be wondering, which is, if all of this is so significant, why hasn't the price moved? And I'm going to be very direct with you. Price discovery does not happen the way most people think it does. Institutional capital does not move into an asset and then announce it through a price spike. Institutional capital moves into infrastructure first. It positions, it allocates, it builds custodial agreements, it establishes counterparty relationships, and only after the position is established, sometimes months or even years later, does the price start to follow. So look at what happened with Bitcoin in 2020 and 2021. MicroStrategy, Tesla, and the institutional treasuries built positions for many months before the public price broke out. Look at what happened with gold in the 1970s. Central banks and sovereign wealth funds were positioned long before retail investors caught on. The lag between infrastructure adoption and price discovery is the standard and not the exception. Okay, so the fact that XRP is not making new highs right now while Ondo and Guggenheim and OpenEden and ArcSec are deploying is not a contradiction. It is the textbook setup if you pay attention. The capital is positioning, the price will follow when positioning is complete and the awareness arrives. Let me also point out something that is one of the most underrated, talked about things when it comes to this. The assets coming onto XRPL are not just tokenized in name. They are operational. Ondo's tokenized treasuries pay yield. Guggenheim's institutional product is structured for redemption. RLUSD is a working dollar instrument settling at scale. ArcSec is a regulated venue with custody. This is not a marketing demo. This is live financial product with real legal wrappers, redemption, mechanics, custodian agreements, and compliance reporting. When you see that type of activity, what you're watching is not a chain trying to prove itself. You are watching a chain being chosen because it has already proven itself. The proof is in the deployment, and the deployment is the highest signal an institution can send. So the reframe is very simple. If you're watching the price to tell you whether the thesis is intact, you are watching the wrong instrument. The price is the last signal, not the first. The first signal is the regulated capital choosing the ledger. The second signal is the institutional product launching on the ledger. The third signal is the central banks running pilots on the ledger. The fourth signal is the daily settlement volume climbing on the ledger. The fifth signal is the price moving. Eventually, when everything underneath has compounded enough that the public facing tape can no longer ignore it, you are watching signals 1 through 4 happen right now. Signal 5 is downstream. I can't tell you when that is. I'm not here to give you the prediction, but I do know the architecture comes first and the price comes second. I'm smart enough to know that part. And listen, I know that you may feel this right now, all of the tension behind it. Okay, I see the comments. The price chart hasn't been kind to anyone's nerves over the last several months. And there's a part of every long-term holder that wonders, did I get this wrong? And you know what? I'm going to retract that. I think the price has been kind because you can get in and accumulate, but you get what I'm saying, right? And so again, I keep telling you, the story is not broken. The conviction is there for the people who are looking at the right signals, right? The thesis is not broken at all. The thesis is in the part of the cycle that is just the hardest to hold through, which is the part where the institutional capital is positioning and the price just hasn't caught up yet. The data underneath the chart, the 3.5 billion in tokenized assets, the regulated institutions deploying, the central banks running pilots, the daily settlement volume climbing, the data is moving in one direction. And guess what? It is moving fast, whether you know it or not. Now, let me bring it back to the personal part, because I do want it to be personal. I always say this. It has to be personal. Even if you zoom in out, you got to find a way where this is personal for you. Okay. So everything that we're talking about is in one direction, which is that the regulated capital has chosen the ledger and the build out is happening, whether the price chart confirms this or not. So what matters for you personally is not whether the move comes. It is whether your XRP is sitting in the right structure when it does. However, your entire structure is laid out, you have got to start being very intentional about that. All right. If you're holding XRP in a regular taxable brokerage account, or you're holding it on the exchanges, hoping that nothing goes wrong, then you may want to consider that, because when the institutional capital fully arrives and the repricing follows, trust me, you're going to have to pay taxes on that. They're going to come for what you owe them. And of course, they will take a significant portion of what you built. And that's just the math. Okay. Now, when you think about all the years that you spent time holding and the conviction and the watching while everyone else looked at the price chart, the structure that you chose at the beginning of your journey is going to determine how much of the result you actually keep. And most people don't want to talk about this because it's just not exciting. What's exciting to them is, when is this going to run? And when am I going to get a chance to look at my portfolio and see it at a crazy number, right? And you're still not going to know what to do with it, right? So I personally do keep some of my crypto in a Roth IRA through iTrust Capital. And the reason is very simple. Inside a Roth IRA, every dollar of appreciation is going to stay mine completely. And I give myself that structure because it protects me. Okay. If I decide to do anything crazy in between now and then, at least I have an account where I know that there is a upside of my cryptocurrency that I can take profit on and not have to worry about anything else. And so I know that that account is not subject to capital gains, and XRP will make a move, believe it or not. And I get to keep everything when it does. And I just absolutely love that, right? And so I also want to point out that iTrust Capital lets me hold XRP and gold and silver backed by physical assets, and RLUSD, which is Ripple's own stablecoin, HBAR, XDC, Quant, Stellar, Chainlink for those who like Chainlink, all in the same tax advantage structure. Okay. And they also have a premium custody account, which is a closed loop system, meaning institutional grade security, not a retail exchange where everything can happen overnight that you don't want to happen. They have also treasury accounts for LLCs, trusts, and holding companies for those of you who are building at the entity level. So you can stake Solana, Ethereum inside the same structure for passive income. The link is in the description. There is a $100 funding bonus when you fund the account. The window at these prices is not going to stay open forever. I hope you do know that. So get structured before the move, not after you're calculating what you owe. And I do want to add this also because understanding why institutional capital flows into infrastructure before it shows up on the price chart is one thing, but knowing what it means for your specific situation, your structure, your timeline, your position size, that is a completely different conversation that we have to dive into, and you need a game plan for that. And generic advice does not build that plan for you personally. So that's what my one-on-one clarity calls are for. You come in with your situation, your numbers, your goals, and we build something real around it together. I also have my coaching community open for those who want ongoing support every single week, accountability, training, live Q&As, and a community of people building serious strategies around exactly what we just walked through. So the links are in the description for that. And I want you to know a lack of clarity is very, very expensive. So get the framework that holds you in place when the waiting gets heavy, because trust me, when the architecture is finished and the price discovery arrives, the people who already have a plan are not the ones reacting in panic. They are now the ones executing. So get yourself positioned. And also just let me know, out of all the institutions that have been participating in this ecosystem, which one was new to you? And did I miss something? Am I missing another big institution that has been really coming on to the XRPL that you want me to talk about? Drop it in the comments because I want to see what you're paying attention to. Also, like the video if it added value. Subscribe if you haven't already so that you do not miss what's coming up, because I'm telling you, I'm going to keep you updated. And as always, I want you to stay wise, stay wealthy, and I'll see you in the next video.